no doubt the manager will develop. But it is an important leadership competency, because each and every manager, he has to work in teams, he has to supervise, he has to delegate, he has to get the things done from people. And that's the reason why he needs to have this leadership competency. Okay. Next, dash is the ability to identify the right person for open positions, helps to ensure the organization helps to ensure that the organization secures the best talent for the job. Is it interview
Interview skills.
skills, coaching?
Interviewing.
Okay, interviewing skills. Next, dash helps develop employees by gradually increasing job responsibilities and accountability. Is it team building? Is it delegating, or is it coaching?
Coaching helps to develop employees by gradually increasing job responsibilities.
Okay. Any other answer? You are saying coaching helps to develop
Yes, ma'am.
employees by
Actually, there are
gradually.
lots of sites which company provides for technical development, like Plural sites or Udemy. So they give free access to them, that we can learn from Udemy or these all teaching websites and work according to that. So that's why
So
coaching.
you believe, okay, that's why coaching, but then you say that coaching will be required at each and every step, or it would be for inexperienced employees. Each and every step, meaning thereby as an employee grows in the organization. See, initially when he has joined, he is not an experienced employee, right? So all the inexperienced employees, as one of them, he needs to be coached, and he can be benefited from a manager who takes the time to share their experience, who to share the lessons learned, and to provide them the necessary knowledge. So
I
but
think
yes,
yes,
now
ma'am.
you are coming to the correct answer. But when we say by gradually increasing the job responsibilities and accountability, how do you increase the job responsibilities? That is by delegating. So coaching will be in the initial phase when the employees doesn't have any experience within the organization. Right? Okay. Next, an effective dash will help others learn to build on their strengths and improve weaknesses, which is an important aspect of professional development. Is it a leader, team builder, or a coach?
Leader, ma'am. Actually, team builder also. There isn't confusion between A and B.
Team builder will be restricted to teams. When we speak about leader, he is the, you can say, the leader to the entire department, or he could be the leader of the entire organization, or he could be a leader for where different departments are into different products for a particular product or a service. Leaders can be n number of them, right? Whereas when we are again speaking about building on the strengths and improving weaknesses, this is again the basic level training that would be given to the employees when they have just joined, or where they are having less of experience, and they where they need to grow to match the organization culture and things like that. Then we need to have a coach over there that will help them to improve. Okay. And then they will once these things are taken care of, they will automatically start following, they will start giving what is expected by them as a member of the team. They will contribute towards the building of the team, and they will be the followers of the leader within the organization and so on. Okay. Then next, most companies, even the more established ones, tend to overlook dash, which is often what makes or breaks a company. That's easy.
Customer service.
Yes, customer service. Next, the key difference between great and good customer service is that in the latter case, you are doing only dash to keep your customers satisfied. The expected, the minimum, or a bit more than minimum.
The expected, because we are just trying to fulfill the customer requirement. So we are trying to meet the expectation. Is it the correct answer?
Okay, the trying to meet the expected, or
A bit more than minimum.
a bit more than minimum. Okay. So now we are speaking about the latter case. That is good customer service. We are not speaking about a great customer service. So when we say about a good customer service, yes, we are doing the minimum to keep your customers satisfied. So whenever anybody asks question to the customer, are you satisfied by whatever you have received against your money? Is it value for money? He says, yes, whatever I have got is good. This is what I had expected. The minimum expectation. Expectations of the customer can be much more beyond what you are offering as minimum. Okay. Or it can be less than what you are offering. That is what creates customer delight. So when you are saying good customer service, you are giving the bare minimum essentials that are expected by the customer. Expectations can be more or less. You can never define the expectations of customer into a few adjectives as such. There can be many. It will vary from customer to customer. So when you are giving the bare minimum, it is said to be good customer service. Okay, next. Dash gained from customer service also helps the sales team reach their goals. Is it awareness? Is it inputs, or is it knowledge?
Inputs.
Inputs.
Look into the most appropriate word that would fit over there. When we speak of inputs, what are they exactly? Inputs with respect
Feedback.
to what? Okay, feedback. What else?
Ratings.
Ratings given by customers. Okay. So these are the different inputs. Now the inputs given by the customers, they create an awareness amongst us in order to change the way we are catering to the customers. And these inputs, this awareness, what one needs to change, where one needs to change, to what extent one needs to go, all this can be put it in a broader term, that is knowledge. So the correct answer is knowledge gained from customer service. It is not only the inputs and the awareness, but also the conclusions that we are drawing from the inputs received and the awareness created. Right? So most appropriate answer is knowledge. Next, dash is seen as a major differentiator in a hugely cutthroat marketplace where companies are competing to grab the customers. Is it utility? Is it satisfaction? Is it value for money?
Value for money.
Okay. Value for money is seen as a major differentiator in a hugely cutthroat marketplace. Would a customer buy a product in case he is not satisfied or he is not getting the utility? or he is
I
not
think so.
getting the value for money? What is it exactly?
I think utility that product should be.
Okay. The utility that is satisfied by the product is seen as a major differentiator. Okay. Why do we at all come across or we come up with a product, or why at all we keep on making changes to the products? Think. Initially with Colgate, we had the basic toothpaste with what you say, that clove oil into it. Then we moved on to sensitivity analysis, and then for sensitive teeth we came up with a product. We came up with a product that gives a 24-hour or 12-hour protection to the teeth. And then we came up with a mouth freshening gel included into it to make you feel the freshness in the product, and so many things that were added to it. So why a product is basically introduced by business houses?
I think for more customer satisfaction.
Yes, that's the right answer. See, basically business houses come up with products in order to satisfy the wants of the customers. So if the product is taking care of the utility aspect, then usually customers choose the product, and that's where, in case they find that there is no value for money, they won't go in for the product at all. But when we speak about cutthroat competition, and which acts as a major differentiator, so that's where your product is valued somewhere more than the others in the market, than the competitors in the market. It is a satisfaction that is derived from the product that is going to differentiate the product, right? Okay, next. To be successful, a business has to understand the significance of, is it ROI, return on investment, or is it CLV, that is customer lifetime value, or is it customer churn, the manner in which the customers keep on shifting from one producer to other?
No idea, ma'am.
No idea. Is it a return on investment? Who will think about the return on investment? The business houses, right? So in order to be successful, a business has to understand the importance of what are the returns that they are getting on their money invested. Yes, to some extent, return on investment will help them understand whether they are successful or no in the business. But what leads to, or what generates this return on investment? Or when do you get the returns? Is it when the customers are maintained, or is it whenever there is a customer churn? When customer churn, what do we mean by that? I right now said that whenever a customer shifts from one producer to another, that is called as the customer churn. He no longer uses a product that is produced by your business. He shifts to different business houses. So more the customers churn in business, the lesser the return on investment you get. Right? And when we speak about CLV, it is customer lifetime value. When will a customer find value in your product? In the entire lifetime. It is when that the customers are satisfied with your product, and this satisfaction continues irrespective of the other products that are brought in by the competitors, the changes in the products they are catering to differentiate themselves from each other, and so on. So satisfaction plays a major role regarding how much revenue a customer is going to contribute towards your business. So this revenue generation process for any business houses, what is the who are going to generate the revenue for any business? It is nobody else but the customers. Just a moment. So in order to be successful, a business has to understand the importance of this customer lifetime value. What value a customer is looking into with respect to your product, and you keep on continuing that value, continue to give that value from your products and services, and that's where a business will be successful. It will continue to be successful. So that's where the correct answer is customer lifetime value, because it is always, it is a result of both. It is a result of high levels of both the customer satisfaction as well as the, so when the customers are satisfied, they will retain. So customer satisfaction and customer retention, that is what customer lifetime value takes care of, and that will be the indicator of success in business, because that is what is going to generate revenue, that is what is going to give you or give return on investment, and that is why what is going to stop the churning of customers in business. So with this we move on to the next MCQ. Tracking changes in dash would help you to identify whether customers are really happy with the product or service. So what are the changes that you will be tracking? Is it the customer churn levels? Is it the sales levels, or is it the satisfaction levels?
Sales levels. Oh, satisfaction level, I think.
Sales level or satisfaction level?
Satisfaction level, I think.
Satisfaction level, because
More satisfaction.
initially the customers will be either satisfied or not satisfied. That is what will result in sales, affect the sales level, and that in turn will affect the customer churn level. Okay, next. It's dash to retain existing customers, then get new ones. Is it less expensive, more expensive, or it is just expensive?
Less expensive.
Less expensive.
That's the reason we are discussing this entire thing with respect to customer satisfaction, customer lifetime value, and so on. It is because it is less expensive to retain existing customers than creating the new ones. Next, the reality is dash of unsatisfied customers never file a complaint. In fact, they simply leave and they don't come back. So what's the percentage? We looked into the statistics when we were discussing that majority of the companies, they believe that they are the best in business, and they feel since they are best in business, they have no unsatisfied customers. But that's never a reality, because every business house will be having some or the other amount of unsatisfied customers. They have to identify these customers, they have to look into what is not satisfying them and where they need to improve, and there lies the success of any business. So what is it? In reality, dash is the level of unsatisfied customers. They never file a complaint. They never complain, and that's where the business houses are not aware of those unsatisfied customers.
96%.
Yes, that because we had even discussed that it's the number is very alarming. It's 96%. Nobody can even think of such a great percentage. Okay, and then a key component to ensure better customer service is dash your employees properly and constantly for quality issues. Is it to motivate your employees, to persuade your employees, or to praise your employees?
Motivate.
Yes, the correct answer is motivate your employees. So with this, good job, entire class. We are almost done with the MCQ part. And then we move on to our next topic, that is importance of innovation to a manager's job. So one has all the managers within the organization, they have to keep on thinking in whatever jobs, in whatever roles, in whatever hierarchy they are working, they need to keep asking themselves, are you a management innovator, or have you discovered different ways or some new ways to organize, to lead, to coordinate, or to motivate, because they are doing the same thing on a routine basis. So doing the same thing, uh, have they found out any new ways of dealing with the same thing again and again over the number of years, over the experience that they are growing up with? Or is a company a management pioneer, or have they invented novel approaches to management that are the envy of its competitors? Can they come up with something different in management too? It's always not the products and services or the after sales services that you have to keep on looking into something new. Can something new be done with respect to the management that is carried out in the entire organization? And then, does it matter the way in which you manage? Yes, it certainly does matter. So, innovation in management principles and processes, they can create a long lasting advantage, and they can produce dramatic shifts in the competitive position of a business house. Over past 100 years, management innovation, more than any other kind of innovation, has allowed the companies to cross new performance thresholds. Yet, strangely enough, few companies have a well honed process for continuous management innovation, in spite of the fact that this innovation in management, they have allowed the companies to boom like anything. Most managers, most businesses have a formal methodology for product innovation, and many of them have research and development groups that explore the frontiers of the science. Now, virtually every organization on this planet has in recent years worked systematically to reinvent its business processes for the sake of speed and efficiency. Okay, how efficiently a business house can carry the same processes, the same jobs to be done. So, no doubt organizations are looking into this aspect. But still we see that so few companies, they apply a similar degree of diligence to the kind of innovation that matters the most, that is management innovation or innovation in management, or we can say the importance of innovation to a manager's job. So that's the reason why management innovation is important. What makes it different from other kinds of innovation, and how can you and your company become a blue ribbon management innovators? Let's start with this way. Okay, so now let's look into why management innovation matters and how has it affected the major players. Now, General Electric, we have a few examples to quote. GE, that is General Electric, the DuPont, Procter and Gamble, the Visa and the Linux. Now, what are the things that makes them stand out in competition to others in the industry? Is it great products? Yes. Is it great people? Certainly or sure. Is it great leaders? Yes, we can say that they have great leaders to guide them. But if you try to dig deeper into this, you will find another important reason, fundamental reason for the success of these organizations is the innovation in management that they have brought over the years to come. With respect to General Electric, we can say that in the early 1900s, General Electric perfected the Thomas Edison's most notable invention, the Industrial Research Laboratory. G brought management discipline to the chaotic process of scientific discovery. And over next 50 years, they won more patents than any other company in America. So you can say that much of the G's current competitive prowess can be traced to that extraordinary accomplishment that was of the Industrial Research Laboratory. That was the invention that was being made. Then next company was DuPont. DuPont, it played a pioneering role in the development of capital budgeting techniques. Okay, when it initiated the use of return on investment calculations somewhere traceable in 1903. A few years later, the company also developed a standardized way of comparing the performance of its numerous product departments. So that was, in a way, they were managing the different product departments, right? Now these innovations, this analysis, okay, amongst others, helped DuPont become one of the America's industrial giants. Then we have the P&G, Procter & Gamble. Its preeminence in the packaged goods industry has its roots somewhere in 1930s, when the company began to formalize its approach to brand management, developing their own brand. Since then, in decades to come, P&G steadily built upon its early success in creating value out of intangible assets. P&G's product portfolio thereby included 16 brands that have produced 1 billion plus in sales every year. So that's how they grew, by brand management. Then, speaking about Visa, the world's first near virtual company, it owes its success entirely to organizational innovation that it had. When Visa's founder, banks formed a consortium in the United States in the early 1970s, they laid the groundwork for one of the world's most famous brands. Today, Visa is a global financial web that links more than 21,000 financial institutions and more than 1.3 billion cardholders. And the other one to speak about is Linux, the computer operating system. It is a best known example of a recent management innovation, that is open source development. Now, based on other innovations like the general public license and online collaboration tools, open source development had proved to be a highly effective mechanism for eliciting and coordinating the efforts of geographically dispersed individuals. So that's where Linux grew. So as these examples show, a management breakthrough can deliver a potent advantage to the innovating company and produce a seismic shift in the industry leadership. So technology and tend to deliver small caliber advantages. No doubt that the change in technology, innovation in products, they do have some advantages of its own, but innovation in the management, the way you manage the things, that is going to have a long lasting effect on building leaders in business industries, right? So a management innovation thereby creates a long lasting advantage when it meets one or more of the three conditions. The innovation is based on a novel principle that challenges the management orthodoxy. It is systematic, encompassing a range of processes and methods, and it is a part of an ongoing program of innovation and invention where the progress compounds over the period of time. So, three brief cases that we will be discussing today, they will illustrate the ways in which management innovation has created an enduring success apart from the ones which we have discussed right now. So, one is harnessing the employee intellect at Toyota. Now, think, why has it taken America's automobile manufacturers so long to narrow their efficiency gap with Toyota? In a large part, we can say because it took Detroit more than 20 years to ferret out the radical management principle that was at the heart of Toyota's capacity for relentless improvement. Unlike its Western rivals, Toyota has long believed that first line employees can be more than cogs in a soulless manufacturing machine. They can be problem solvers, they can be innovators, and they can be change agents. That's what Toyota believed in with respect to first line managers. While American companies, they relied on their staff experts to come up with process improvements. Toyota gave every employee the skills, the tools, and the permission to solve the problems as and how they arose and to head off the new problems before they even occurred. So the result was, year after year, Toyota has been able to get more out of its existing developing people than its competitors have been able to get out of theirs, right? So such is the power of the management orthodoxy, automation, that they were finally able to admit that Toyota's real advantage was its ability to harness the intellect of ordinary employees, because they believed that it is the first line employees, they are actually working on the product. They are the most they will be giving the most valuable information with respect to not only the problems that could be faced, but also with respect to the innovation that could be brought in the products. Okay, and it is not the staff experts, but it is the first line employees. Now, as this example illustrates that management orthodoxies are often so deeply ingrained in the executive thinking process that they are nearly invisible. They continue with the same management thought and perspective that is being carried out for years together, that they are not even able to see what is bringing the difference in their products, and are also devotedly held that they are practically unassailable. The more unconventional the principle underlying a management innovation, the longer it will take the competitors to respond. And in some cases, the head scratching can go in for decades. That's where the competitors are exactly making the difference and moving ahead in years to come, right? So that was one example, that is harnessing the employee intellect at Toyota. Then we look into another example where they Whole Foods, that's where they believed in building a community at Whole Foods. Now, it was tough for rivals to replicate the advantages that were based on a web of individual innovations that are spanning many management processes and practices. That was one reason why no competitor has matched the performance of Whole Foods market, which has grown during 25 years to 161 stores and more than 8 billion in annual sales. While other grocery chains, they have been slashing costs to fend off the Walmart, Whole Foods has been rapidly evolving an extraordinary retail model, one that already delivers the highest profits per square foot in the industry. Imagine the profitability is measured per square foot in the industry. Now, what may not be obvious to the health conscious consumers and growth loving investors is that the company's management model is just as distinctive as its high margin business model. John Mackey, the company's founder and CEO, says that his goal was to create an organization that is based on love instead of fear, and describes the Whole Foods as a community working together to create value for other people. Now, at Whole Foods, the basic organizational unit is not the store, but then it is the small teams that manage the departments, such as fresh produce, teams that prepared the foods, and the seafood. Managers consult the teams on all store level decisions, and they grant them a degree of autonomy, freedom that is necessary, that is nearly unprecedented in the retailing. Each team decides what they have to stock and can they have a command on the new hires. Bonuses are paid to teams, not to individuals, and team members they have access to comprehensive financial data, including the details of every co-worker's compensation. In many companies, the policy that is being followed is you are not supposed to disclose what is the compensation rate that you are gaining, right? So believing that 100:1 salary differentials are incompatible with the ethos of community, the company has set a salary cap that limits any executive's compensation to 14 times the company average. So over here, the caps are being laid on the executive's compensation and not on the compensation that the teams or the team members would be earning. So just as startling is the fact that 94% of the company's stock options have been granted to non-executives, that is what differentiates the Whole Foods. Is not a single management process, but it is a distinctive management system altogether that Whole Foods is having. So, confronted by the management innovation, this is comprehensive. Rivals couldn't do a little more than they shake their heads in wonder as to how come Whole Foods has managed and they have kept Walmart aside or kept Walmart behind. So that's how they believed in building a community. They believed in teamwork rather than executives empowering the different teams to work. That's where the autonomy was given to different teams who decided what they should be stocking, to whom they must be hiring, and the manner in which they must be performing. So that is with respect to building a community at Whole Foods. And then In the next session to come, we'll be discussing about the great leaders that have helped General Electric to march ahead in the industry, right? So that's where we stop over here for today, where we started with the importance of innovation in management or in managing things, and how and the manner in which it will be contributing to the organizational success as such in whatever it's trying to achieve. So thank you, class. That's where we stop here for today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yes.